Hey, I don't know if you noticed, but on the main street, or I guess just outside of the shop, they're putting up I guess like the local bus services or the whatever the transportation
Greyhound.
is. Yeah, Greyhound
The
or whatever.
Greyhound
Apparently,
bus.
there's like a stop off, like not right in front of the shop, but like just kind of on the corner. And I thought that was kind of interesting, or it had a little bit of a tie-in to the movie we're going to talk about today. But before we do that, my name is Eli. I'm one of the co-owners of Top Shelf Video.
And I'd be the other co-owner, and my name is Jaime.
Yeah, and I was gonna ask you because I saw that and I was thinking like I don't know if you've ever gone on a bus ride outside of I mean maybe you have but like outside of like on band trips and band bus rides excluded. Have you ever taken like a bus ride as like a relatively long distance for travel, like at any point?
Yeah, actually, as a matter of fact, I didn't think about it till the movie, but a couple years ago, and I was trying to remember why this played out the way it did, but I basically Landon, my son Landon he was little, and he was down. I think he spent the summer with mom and dad, or for some reason he was down there, and I went down, and we actually rode the bus back to Austin.
Oh, okay.
And because I was like, yeah, this will be cool. He's never been, riding a bus is not. I mean, they're still around, obviously, but
Right. Yeah.
More people have cars nowadays than not, and it just seemed like a cool idea. And I don't know what possessed me to do it, but we took the bus. I mean, we had a couple stops, at little gas station places, and he was having the time of his life because I mean, obviously the newer buses have Wi-Fi and.
Oh, yeah.
But he was like the whole idea of like, we could sit, we were chilling, nobody was driving. We bought snacks, and he got to sit by the window.
Yeah.
And just kind of, I mean, the ooh ah of it kind of wears off pretty quick, But
sure. Yeah.
But it was still a memorable. I got pictures of him. I probably think they're probably on Facebook by now, but from years ago, so I'm sure they'll come up as a memory. But yeah, that was like the one thing that we did. We took the bus back to Austin.
That was a Greyhound? It's like
yeah. Well, was it Greyhound? And maybe not Greyhound, but it was one of those. One of those like off-brand.
Yeah, because there are a decent amount of those. I think that still like travel or are used in travel. I was. It's funny you say that because I actually there was that one year. That I guess I was, for me, that one time at band camp, and I was actually at a band camp at University of Texas, at Austin. And I want to say it was like going in to my freshman year, or I don't know if I was going into my freshman year. No, I don't think it was. It must have been going into my 8th grade year, maybe 7th going into 8th. But I just remember like I remember a lot of people were doing it, and I asked Mom, if I could maybe go to band camp and see what it's all about. And I guess I was thinking I wanted to pursue music. I think the three of us were really kind of inclined to want to do that, or we were thinking maybe that was going to be kind of our path in the creative arts. I guess is just in band, but I remember going because that was like the first time I had ever been away from home. Like by myself, and it was very like culture shock, and it probably was a lot. I mean, it definitely was a lot rougher than I thought it was going to be. Like, I guess I didn't realize that I wasn't necessarily ready for like completely being away from mom, dad, or you guys, and not having anything but myself to take care of myself. And like, we didn't know anybody in Austin and all that jazz, and. So went to band camp, but it started off kind of rough, but then it ended like pretty well. But then because mom and dad were both working, because I remember they dropped me off. Like they drove up to Austin, they dropped me off, but coming back, they weren't going to be able to take time off, or because I think the band camp finished like on like Sunday
middle
night.
of the week. Oh,
Or no, I think it was like a Sunday night, or but that was the thing. Like I want to say the final performance of the camp itself was like around 5 o'clock on a Sunday, and mom and dad were both like, I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure they were working. And on top of that, it was like, well, like we wouldn't be able to get off in time to drive all, because that was what it's about from the valley. That was probably like 5.5 hours.
No, it's more than that. Well, maybe 5.5, 6.
5.5, 6 hours. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's not like they could, because like even if they left, like after work or whatever, they wouldn't even get up there until like close to midnight, and then we'd have to drive all night, right? So they were like, "You're gonna have to take the bus back," and I remember it was quite traumatizing because again, I had never like a 14-year-old was like.
Yeah.
I dropped off at the bus station and I had to figure out everything myself. And what was the situation? So my bus was supposed to leave like at, I think it was supposed to leave like at 7 p.m. And then I guess I would get in like a little past midnight or whatever. But something happened where like the bus either like broke down or there was some sort of cancellation. I don't know what the deal was. I don't remember. But I basically they were like, yeah, sorry, that bus is not available anymore. And so like and again, pre-cell phones, right? So like,
yeah, no
I
shit,
remember,
right?
I remember calling mom because I was like, I don't know what to do. And they had said like, well, your ticket's still valid. You just, this ride's not there.
Yeah.
And so I was like, does that mean I need to sleep in the bus station until the next bus? But they were like, well, you can take a bus to San Antonio and then you can transfer from San Antonio to the valley, and you can go through that whole, spiel or whatever. And again, I was like, 14, I think maybe, or something. Is extremely like traumatizing because I had to go from Austin to San Antonio, and they were like, well, this bus is going to leave like around 8 o'clock or whatever. And that's like a 2-hour drive, to San Antonio from Austin. But the bus was basically at capacity. And I was like, well, my mom says I have to take this bus. And they were like talking to mom on the phone, they kind of back and forth. But because the bus was like overpacked, I had to stand in the aisle for like 2 hours. And I had my bags and like my stuff. And so like, it was like terrible. And then when we got to San Antonio, I had to transfer. And then I asked like maybe 50 times, it's like, is this the bus to the valley? Cause like, the last thing I wanted to was get on the wrong bus and then get shipped in some other direction that
no shit, right? End up in fucking Minnesota or some shit.
Yeah, or I end up going to like Laredo, or I end up going to El Paso or something like that. So, and it was funny because then I remember basically we traveled all night because I guess, buses drive like around the clock. Yeah. And like you were saying, they have little stop-offs to drop off packages because I guess it's like super cheap to send packages through.
Oh Jesus!
Like
yeah,
Greyhound
mom and
stuff.
dad. Yeah, they used to send everything through the bus.
Yeah, and so they would stop at like every other like stop.
Yeah, like a convenience store,
towns.
like in all the little towns. Yeah, they did a convenience store, and that was like the pickup drop off.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh, okay.
So I left probably around 8 p.m. and then I think I got back into the valley around 10 a.m. like the next day.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it was like the longest bus ride I've ever taken. It was very traumatizing, and like I don't know, it kind of had me thinking about this movie because we grew up lower middle class. We didn't have it hard, but the movie that we're talking about today is 1986's Crossroads. And no, Denise, not the Britney Spears Crossroads movie.
Is that what she was asking you?
Yeah, she was like, "Oh, you guys are watching Britney Spears' Crossroads?"
Fuck no.
I was like, I didn't even know that was like a movie, but I guess it is. But no, we're not watching that one. We were watching the one with Ralph Macchio, Crossroads from 1986, and it is directed by Walter Hill. I don't know if you're familiar with Walter Hill's work. He's got some big hits on there. So I remember him from directing a few Tales from the Crypt episodes, like the TV series. He directed Red Heat with Arnold Schwarzenegger. If you remember that one.
Yeah, the Russian, right?
Yeah. But he's probably most known for directing and writing. And I think he was a producer as well of Streets of Fire. Which I don't think you've seen that, right? You still haven't seen Streets of Fire.
And my wife is insisting, Karen is insisting that we do an episode on that movie.
Yeah.
Because she knows that we both are like in love with Diane Lane.
Yeah, and it's a good movie, but I think Walter Hill's probably most famously known for The Warriors. The gang movie. He was also like the producer of Aliens, and he's like a pretty big name in Hollywood, and like in the sense of like he's been around and he's been involved with some pretty big franchises. I think that sort of this movie kind of resonates a little bit with that. I have a couple thoughts on that with regards to this movie, but this movie, I think part of the reason why I wanted to pull this movie into our discussion was partly because Denise and I recently, and we've there's an episode about it on Film to Table, but I recently saw Sinners, the new movie from Ryan Coogler and with Michael B. Jordan, and it's phenomenal. It's like right now, as it currently stands, it's my favorite movie of this year. And granted, we're only I guess we're almost
we're about to go into May. We're almost in May.
So we're like 5 months into the year, and it's definitely like my favorite movie of the year thus far. But
it is horror, right? Considered horror.
It is horror. Like I don't want to give spoilers, especially. I think.
I don't want spoilers. I just because if I'm gonna,
it is horror.
Karen, my wife is, bless her heart, she's one of those people that anything will startle her and she'll scream.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't have a partner that I can go to watch horror movies, so I have to kind of try to talk her into going because I got a weekend free, so I'm gonna try to talk her into going. But I need to know. I mean, if there's just tell me,
there is violence. There is jump scares. It's definitely
fuck. Okay.
Yeah, it kind of to be fair and transparent, like I actually kind of jumped very early on because I just wasn't expecting it. Even though
fuck. If it made you jump scare, she's gonna fucking scream. So
and usually
I'm gonna have to figure something out.
Yeah, I'm not one to usually get caught by the jump scare, but I was watching it in IMAX, so it's the biggest. It's as big of a screen as you will get.
Sure.
I think it's like 2.5 stories or something is the IMAX. But anyway, in watching Sinners, and it is horror, but it does take place in Mississippi, so in the Deep South in the I think the early 1940s, and it has a little bit to do with the blues, and there are certain aspects of it that I didn't really realize were going to be part of the movie. And so when the movie was over and I was thinking about like movies that like, man, I haven't seen a movie like this. And the movie we're talking about, Crossroads, I wouldn't say it's not even remotely close to Sinners, but it's the only thing that I could think of that came to my mind that sort of resonated with like this, the story of like the blues specifically. And it's kind of funny because one of the things that I feel like in us like studying music like the way we did when we were growing up, but also just like studying history and I was a big history person and for a minute there I thought maybe I wanted to be a history teacher or something, but when you talk about like the history of the United States, and so because we're a country of immigrants, which I think is great. Like I love this country, and I love the fact that we are like this melting pot of different cultures and things, and it sort of makes up what we are. And one of the few things you can note about the United States is like we never really invented anything or created anything that you could truly say is American. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
that's formed from that, with the exception of the blues. Like the blues is actually one of the very few things that, and even then people will debate that because it's like, well, the blues was created by like people that were slaves that were like singing the music of to just kind of get them through what they were going through.
Yeah.
And since a lot of that, started in the Caribbean and sort of moved its way here, like from Africa, but I guess in like, I didn't do a deep dive in history, but I do know in studying some level of history about it, it's like blues can be considered one of the very few things that actually was created in the United States and is truly something that is American. And it was created, by mostly black people in the South during that era of, like singing to their experiences and things like that. Like it was almost like the transformation of gospel music into like a form of like not rock, but not jazz, and that's the thing, right? It's like those things that jazz was already its thing and rock already had a place, or rock and roll, I guess you could say. But really rock and roll was kind of formed from the blues. Yeah. And so in seeing The Sinners and then thinking about it, I was like, oh man, we should watch Crossroads. Because I can't think of the last time I've seen this movie. It was a very, very long time. Like,
oh yeah. Yeah, this was
30 plus years, easy.
Oh, for sure. Easy. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying, because I know, like, I mean, being that our entire family was, our who we are was kind of revolved around us all being in music. Right. And music is all about emotion. And it makes sense because, during those times of when blues was coming around, it was, they were expressing their emotion. Right. And this sadness and oppression and depression, because of the situations they were finding themselves in, and it's just one of those, it's one of those genres of music, like you feel it. Right. In your inside, like you feel like when you get like that emotion, and they reference it in the movie, the scene later on when, what's her name? Frances. Yep. Takes off. I mean, and anyway, I mean, I don't want to get too far ahead, but yeah, just the music was always emotional, Yeah. That's why it's so important. That's why like soundtracks are so important to movies, because it gives that additional layer of like, you'll feel it, and if it draws an emotion from you, then it's really fucking good music, Yeah. And blues is definitely one of those genres that it'll the good stuff will make you emotional. Yeah, it all comes from the soul. And I think that's a big part of it, right? It's like you got to have soul to be able to play the blues. Yeah. And I even remember like when we, like, I think you and I think if I'm not mistaken, like I was in the jazz band, which was like sort of auxiliary to the rest of the band. Yeah, just additional. Yeah. Yeah. But I think like having played music, and granted, you got to have, there's a level of emotion in playing all kind of music. Like even when we were playing marching band and like, it's more technical, like drumming. And then there's like symphony and orchestra sort of music that also requires a level of like emotion to like, you play with a little bit of like feeling, but like it's to the extent of the music itself. But like you were saying, the blues is very different in that like when somebody really knows the blues, like you could hear the difference in the music, because it's like, I don't know, there's something, it's like for us in marching band, it's like, no, it's got to be tighter and sharper, and like there's a way to describe it
in a way that kind of makes sense, where you're like, oh, okay, yeah, like I'm going to tighten up, my positioning of my hands or whatever. And there's like technique and there's a lot of like technical stuff that kind of goes into it. But in the jazz, like even in jazz, it's kind of like, oh yeah, you want to kind of loosen up and kind of this and that. Yeah. But again, it feels very technical, right? Like,
oh yeah. There's still a technicality to it. Yeah. Jazz is very, play loose, man. It's very,
But even then, it's like it's loose, but you have to maintain some sort of discipline, and so maybe loose is like letting your wrist kind of snap a little bit if you're kind of holding it, in a traditional like position instead of a match position. But then, like when you're talking about the blues, though, it's very like it's not like bend the string a little bit more and push it. This and that. It's like no, man, you gotta feel it, you gotta hear it, and then you gotta let it come out. And there's no other way of describing that, and it's just kind of like it's kind of cool. Like
yeah. I mean that genre of music is literally like like when someone says they're feeling blue, you're feeling down,
exactly.
You're feeling low.
Yeah.
I mean it literally is named after the feeling.
Yeah.
That music is you're feeling blue. It's the blues. That's
put it on.
That's what it is.
Like let it out. It's a way of
it's like expression. Therapeutic. Yeah, like getting yeah.
So it's kind of cool that like one of the very few things that was made in America is like the blues. I mean, even though it's the history of it, you could say is very like kind of a bummer because it comes from slaves and people that were enslaved.
Not our best. Like not our best. Moments
not our best moments, but at the same time, like it just shows the perseverance of the people that would like really be the foundations of this country. Right? Is like. We wouldn't have a lot of things we have if it wasn't for these people that were doing a lot of, tough work and stuff like that. But, they are very proud people in the sense of like, that's why blues, is so important to them. And so that's a big part of this movie. It's a big part of that movie, Sinners. But so I guess if we just kind of jump into the movie because it's a pretty straightforward movie, I would say. Like, it's a pretty standard drama, or I guess it's kind of listed as like a drama, and of that time period, I kind of say, or we've said in the past, they don't really make movies like this anymore. But this is an interesting like road trip sort of movie, there's been plenty of road trip movies, and this one falls in those categories. It's just a little different, and so yeah, it's Ralph Macchio is a up and coming, I guess you could say, musician, or he's studying music at Juilliard, and so they're in New York.
Classical guitar. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like some sort of young phenom that has he's at Juilliard, and
he's like fascinated with the blues. And the history behind it.
Yeah, and so they show him pretty early on, like doing research and like learning about the blues or whatever, and he finds out that one of the musicians of that era that I guess he was really into, Willie Brown, who I guess was also playing with
Robert Johnson.
Yeah, Robert Johnson. Willie Brown was the harmonica player, and Robert Johnson was the guitar player, and he's researching them, and he comes to find out that that there was an incident, I guess, where Willie Brown was accused of I don't remember if he was stabbing or shooting somebody back in the day, and so he is in a low security retirement home, I guess, like in New York.
Yeah, that's what it seemed like. Just like because it looked like a lot of older folks. It looked like a retirement home, but like you pointed out, there was bars on the windows, and I was like, damn, I didn't even notice. So yeah, it is in fact a minimum security facility.
Yeah, which I thought was kind of funny because everybody in there is like walking around with walkers, and like it's just like, oh, okay, like I guess they're really worried about these guys, being able to break out and run off. But Eugene, who is Ralph Macchio's character, he is I guess he's wanting to or he researches and wants to get to know about this incident where Robert Johnson and Willie Brown were playing together, and I guess they had put together these 29 songs, and apparently there was a 30th song that was never actually recorded, I guess, on tape, but that it was there, and he wants to know the story behind that, but he also wants to know if there was a 30th song, like he would like to know about that song, and he'd like to learn the actual song. So he's hoping that if he can befriend like Willie Brown, that he'll kind of show him that song, or like help him with his, I guess, like knowledge of the blues, you know? Yeah, it's kind of funny because it turns into a little bit of like, it's slightly comical in the beginning because, you know, he's like an old, he's supposed to be like an 80-year-old black man who's just kind of like, oh, get off my yard, and, you know, I don't want to deal with you kids, and, you know, I've done my time, so he doesn't want to be bothered by anybody. And so he, you know, he shoos away like Ralph Macchio's character Eugene, and then Eugene eventually, like, he's like, well, if I can't get in, then maybe I'll take a job here as a
a janitor.
A janitor, yeah. So as a janitor allows him access to there, and then he starts bugging him and telling him like, hey, I know who you are, and he's like, no, you don't know anything, kid. You know, like, you don't know who I am. You got me mistaken. You know, blah blah blah. And eventually, over time, he does befriend him, and they start talking a little bit about, you know, tell me what it was like, you know, and he kind of showed, like, one evening, I guess, like, Eugene comes up with his guitar and plays for him, and he's like, you know, he kind of does that classic, like, hey, kid, you kind of got the goods, but not all the goods, you know, but I'll listen to what you have to say, you know. And it's funny because it's the music, I'm pretty sure, was all played by Steve Vai, who was back then, I guess, a real guitar protege, who was like studied underneath Joe Satriani, who was the other like guitar like wizard protege of the era. And it's funny because he plays the music, and I'm like, I don't know, that's not like anything super like great, but like it's enough for Willie to kind of be like, all right, you know, I hear what you have to say. And you know, he starts bugging him, you know, about like, you know, you got to show me the song, and you got to teach me the blues. And it kind of goes back to what you and I were saying, where Willie Brown starts like interrogating Eugene and asking him like, where are you from? Like, what time on Earth have you spent? Like, where do your stories and where do your emotions come from? And he's like, oh, I'm from like Rhode Island or
what do you say? New Jersey?
Yeah, or New Jersey or something like that. Or no, I thought it was like Rhode Island. Maybe it is New Jersey. I can't remember. But he's like, oh, like, you're not even from the South. Like, he's like, you're not
what do you know about the blues?
Yeah, you're
he kind of implies like you haven't had any struggle in your life. Because then when he tells him he's at Juilliard, he's like, what the shit? Like, that's not where you learn the blues.
Right.
You know, you got to be, you know, kind of implying like you haven't had any hardship in your life. You don't know shit about the blues.
Yeah. How are you supposed to create the blues when you don't even know the blues? Like the idea, like you were saying earlier, of like, the blues is a form of expression when you say like, oh man, I got the blues. And it just kind of, you know, life's kind of punched you a couple times extra hard in the gut. And that's like, you got the blues, right? Doesn't necessarily mean that you can play music, but it means you got those stories. And I think like that's what Willie's sort of like insinuating, right? Is like, well, what backstory do you have? Like, you know, and so they eventually cut a deal with each other of saying like, look, tell you what, like, you get me to Mississippi, you get me out of this like old folky home, and you know, if you can do that, I'll teach you this other song. And so, you know, he's like, all right, you know, I'll take that chance. Let's get a deal. And this whole time, like, Ralph Macchio, they intercut this with him like studying at Juilliard, and he's learning like music, but also like, going to Juilliard definitely means that he's come from money, or he's got some sort of support there that, not that there's maybe anything necessarily wrong with that. He's not necessarily abusing that in a way where he's like, oh, well, I'm very rich or this or that. It's just more like the idea of like, the juxtaposition between somebody who grew up during the Jim Crow era to somebody who's like, a phenom who I think at one point they say like, oh, they let him like get out of high school early so that he could start Juilliard early. So he's like younger than everybody else. So everything's kind of just been sort of handed to him. And so the two of them hit the road. And that's where this movie kind of turns into a very like, not a buddy cop movie, but like sort of this, traveling like road movie, I guess you could say, like, very similar to like, not as extreme as planes, trains, and automobiles, but like where you have like you're on the road, sort of thing. I guess the other one I can think of is the Tom Cruise movie with Dustin Hoffman. I can't remember.
Oh, Rain Man.
Rain Man, yeah, where they're kind of like they spend a lot of time on the road, sort of. Right. This movie spends the majority of the movie with them on the road.
Yeah.
And Willie Brown is basically telling his stories of his experiences, and it's kind of funny because then he starts really talking about how like he is like he was a hobo, and he's like, and by being a hobo I had to travel the country just whatever means were necessary, and it was almost like this like Obi-Wan Kenobi like sort of hobo wisdom of like all the things that he had to do on the road to make money, and jumping on trains, and how he would find places to stay and sleep, and being with all these women and heartbreak and everything, and so he's kind of passing along this wisdom to Ralph Macchio, who has brought his guitar with him, and Willie has his harmonica. So every now and then, we get like a little musical interlude in between like their travels. So Ralph Macchio takes his money, and they're able to get on a Greyhound bus and go from New York to Tennessee. And then they have to transfer from Tennessee to Mississippi, to come to find out like, they actually didn't have enough money to do that.
Well, that's right, because Willie Brown claims to have the money to pay the rest of the way, but it turns out he's bullshitting. He's only got an additional $40. So when they get to the Tennessee and they're trying to get the tickets, he's like, yeah, here's this roll of money, and like most of it's just newspaper.
Yeah,
all he had was like $2.20s.
Yeah, and I think what it really is also is like Willie Brown's been in lockup or in this home for so long that I guess he doesn't really know the value of the dollar anymore, because he's like, that should be plenty of money.
Yeah, and, I thought about that, because I mean he'd been, I guess, incarcerated for a while, so as far as he was concerned, $40 went a long way.
Cross country, like that's more than plenty enough money, like back in the 30s, 40s or whatever, and like it's been 40 years later now that he's like hasn't been or hasn't seen the light of day. So I thought that was a little funny. So once they get to like Tennessee, they have to go on foot, and they start hitchhiking their way like sort of across the
hoboing.
They're hoboing, which is kind of funny because like I can't think of. I mean, there are other movies. There's definitely another movie that I want to cover that deals with like hitting the road or hitchhiking or whatever. And you really, I don't know. Like, I don't know if that's really a thing that people really do anymore. I know people go backpacking in Europe or whatever, but I don't know how many people like actually just straight up like old school hitchhike,
Yeah.
or if that's really like a thing or something. But yeah, I thought it was just kind of interesting. And so they hit the road and they have like Ralph Macchio has this like this acoustic sort of beat up guitar, and they're kind of walking their way, and one of their first stops, they stop off at a what do you call it, like a pawn shop, sort of
Yeah.
place, and the Willie Brown's kind of like, man, you get rid of this shit, like you can't play blues with like with a guitar like this, he's like, you need like gotta have the right tools, so they go to a pawn shop and he wants them to trade in his guitar for like a more adequate guitar.
Oh, he gives up his watch too.
That's right. Like he has this watch to pay for an electric guitar with like an amp. And it's funny because then you really get the sense of like, I really like the character of Willie Brown because like he like I said, he's just got all this like hobo wisdom.
Yeah, he's constantly hustling.
Yeah, like he's talking to the pawn shop guy and he's like, now listen here, like,
Yeah,
this watch is
$1,100 watch.
So like, he's cashing in on everything that they can kind of get, since they're making ends meet with like whatever money they can like kind of piece together or whatever. But so they get, they update their equipment. They kind of get, I guess, a little bit more cash in their pocket. So they hit the road again, and then they find like an abandoned home, like off the road, that they kind of like decide like, oh, that's going to be a good spot to like hold up for the night. Yeah, just, let's get out of the rain. Let's find a place to sleep, or whatnot. So they find this abandoned home, but it turns out there's another hobo in there who is Francis, played by Jamie Gertz, which is funny. I was telling you, like, when I was having dinner tonight before I came into the shop, Twister was on, and I was like, "Oh,
yeah, she's in that." I forgot.
Yeah, so Jamie Gertz from Twister, and it's funny because if you look up her resume at work, like Twisters and Crossroads are two of the four that are like listed as like some of her more known properties.
I figured Lost Boys would be the.
Oh, well, Lost Boys was the other one. Yeah, Lost Boys was the other one, and there was one more. I can't remember what it was. So they run into Frances, and she's talking about how she's hit the road and she's on her way to L.A. from Philly. Or no, is it from Philly?
Yeah, that's right.
She's.
Yeah. She was from Philly. She was heading to L.A. for a dancing gig.
Okay, yeah. I guess she was headed south, and then I guess she'll go west once I guess she hits like a way to get there. But so I thought the sequence was kind of funny.
I guess she was taking the long way. Now that you mention it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess she's maybe just following the road that will get her there. But I thought it was like a really funny sequence because I think this movie's okay, but I think that like when it does shine is when you really see Willie Brown, the character, and Eugene really play off of each other really well, because in that whole sequence, like Eugene's character, who's this, white, maybe I wouldn't say rich, but probably like comfortable enough that he can go to Juilliard. And he just doesn't understand some of the hustle that like street people would have. And I wouldn't even say like necessarily street people, but I think like even people like you and I growing up, like when you see an opportunity for something, like you kind of, your street smarts sort of kick in of like, oh, well, how can I make money off of this? Or how can I angle this in my favor? Right. And make sure that, you're sort of taken care of. Not that you're being an asshole, but it's just, you got to make sure that you're covered. And in that
smarts,
in that whole sequence, like, it's funny because Willie Brown is like immediately like, once the three of them are like, all right, well, she's like, I'm not going to stay, I'm going to move on and go on my own way. And, Ralph Macchio is very like, yeah, it's a good idea, and it's a good thing she's leaving because it's less hassle. Like, he's thinking of it from a very practical standpoint of like, yeah, like I don't want to have to worry about her stuff when we're sleeping, or like what if she tries to rob us or whatever. But then like Willie Brown's immediately like, He's like,
Yeah,
no,
get
no,
your
no, no,
shit.
get your shit. We're following her. And he's like, why are we following her? He's like, because she's got legs and like that's going to get rides. And he's like, so wherever she goes, we're going. And I was like, oh man, that's like really funny because his hobo wisdom just kind of continues to shine, you know, of like, you got to understand like situational awareness, right? Like, you know, she's a good looking woman and she's hitchhiking. So why don't we all just go together? Like,
oh yeah, the cars are going to stop for her because he
ain't
said
nobody
something like
gonna
that.
stop
He's like,
for us.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's like, you know, the cars are going to stop for her ass, not for your guitar.
Yeah.
Or some shit. He references something, and so he's like, oh, come on, let's go. We're going to catch her.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty good, and really well like written out and thought out, and so yeah, so then they both the three of them end up at like in a hotel, like a very off the road like, I guess probably more of a motel, not even a hotel.
Yeah.
Because that would be what a motor. I guess motels were considered motor inns or whatever because they're kind of off the road.
Yeah.
And
I've always thought the motels are the ones where the doors are on the outside, and hotels have the hallway with the doors inside.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
and so they're at a motel, and they see that Frances is kind of looks like she's kind of hustling people, like she's maybe willing to do sex work, I guess, to kind of get some cash or have a place to stay or whatever. And Eugene and Willie Brown are kind of sleeping outside, and I guess they have concerns for her, like her safety, and so they see her kind of like working one of the Southern gentlemen, I guess, who's kind of the
I think he was the owner of the bar.
Yeah, well,
the one that ran him off.
I think he's the owner of the motel, which I think.
Oh yeah.
I think there's a bar in the motel.
Yeah.
And so
right.
I think he's like the owner. Yeah. And so she's trying to hustle him, but then like Ralph Macchio sort of jumps in, and he's starting to sort of fall for her, and you can kind of see it, because he's very like innocent, I guess is like a way to put it. Again, he has no life experience. So he hasn't seen any of these things. He probably hasn't met somebody like this, or met somebody like Willie Brown, that thinks a little differently. Like he thinks he knows everything because he's studied it from library books, but far from knowing anything. And so like they sort of form this bond. And, they sort of save her and get her out of trouble. And there's another situation where they go to another town, and they are at I guess a honky-tonk is probably what I would imagine.
Yeah, it was weird because like one side of the street was clearly the country, white folks, cowboy hats, and like literally across the street was the blues.
It was a juke. Is what they referred to it. Yeah,
but there was definitely segregation in that. Yes. In that southern town, because it was like all the white folks were over there listening to the honky tonk, and Willie Brown was like, "You go do your thing, and I'm gonna be over here." And
that's why I was thinking about it too, because like in that movie Sinners, one of the main plot points is that they are building a juke for themselves. And so when that gets brought up here, I was like, that was still like a thing in the 80s where they literally were calling it, like a juke. And so I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah, a juke joint, which is primarily for black people. Like, and it has its historical roots from the blues. And so I thought that was kind of neat. There's like a whole sequence there, and I think that's when you really start to see Eugene's character really start to, he has to kind of play in front of all these other black people to sort of almost show like his
worthiness.
Of being able to stay in the juke, because they're ready to like kick his ass and throw him out.
Oh yeah, at the door they were like, "You're in the wrong, you're on the wrong side of the street. You're supposed to be over there."
Yeah, exactly.
But they don't know they had literally just gotten kicked out of that because they. Clearly didn't belong there either. They were kind of stuck between both worlds, and Frances got caught, trying She stole a pickpocket in a wallet. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, that's how they got kicked out.
Yeah, so there's like a whole sequence of that, and I thought that was like really cool, because at that point you start to really see that slowly but surely, Eugene's character is starting to basically earn life experience, because in the honky tonk, he gets shot at. There's guys like fighting with him. He's drinking whiskey. He's it's all these things that like kind of make up the songs of the blues. And I think it's kind of cool, because like if you stop for a moment, like the things that Willie Brown is trying to teach to Eugene, and I guess when it's not even, I don't even know if teach is the right word, as much as he's trying to tell him like, these are things that I've done, but I'm not like, he's not saying like, you got to live your own life, but it just so happens that it's starting to become similar things, right? Like getting into fights in a honky tonk, and getting a gun pointed at you, and being thrown out of here and there, and being arrested, by the cops, and having their money stolen from them, and all these things are happening on the road. And then more and more he's becoming more fond of Frances, and I think Frances is starting to pick up on that. And I guess Eugene really is starting to like care for her, and he's like trying to convince her to say, like, hey, you should come with us.
Yeah, just stay with us. Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna go to this place, and he's gonna teach you the blues, and she's kind of like, no, I got my own path. And also like she kind of gives her backstory of her sort of abuse, I guess from home, and why she doesn't want to be at home, and why she's a runaway at 17. And so it's not like super heartbreaking, but it is kind of like, I think it's like an interesting story, and it's a nice balance of like, she's a very clearly strong type of character where she's like, no, I'm gonna do my own thing, and I can take care of myself. I don't need anybody's help. Yeah. And I'll punch whoever I got to punch. I'll steal whoever's wallet, whatever. But I guess in one evening where they kind of hook up, I guess like Eugene and Frances, they don't necessarily like show anything, but they sort of imply that maybe they fooled around one evening.
Yeah. Willie gets two rooms at the hotel that night. One is for him, and then one is for the other two. So they stayed in a room together.
Right.
Nothing more than that is really implied, but it's kind of like, they made out in the barn.
Right.
Several scenes before that, but
right.
But that's about the extent of that. But you can tell that there's a puppy love from the innocent and ignorant Eugene. Right. Whereas they point out that Frances is a veteran of running away, so she's got some of the street smarts already. That's why she's kind of like rough and tough, can take care of herself, because this wasn't her first rodeo.
Right.
Whereas she could tell that Eugene was wet behind the ears and kind of was out of place all along this journey, because he was, like you said, just book smart and no hardship to speak of. Right. So I mean, just starting with the fucking bus that they didn't have money to get on the second bus. He's like, well, I guess we're gonna hobo it. So whether it was deliberate or not, because like we were saying, maybe Willie thought $40 was enough to cover
right
back in the day, or the argument could be made it was strategic, because he purposely knew what he was doing so that he could start instilling and getting Eugene to experience hardship. And we're like, well, we're gonna have to fucking figure it out, So let's get on the road. Let's get to walking, So clearly, he was like the little puppy love kind of thing, and she could feel on that. And it was, I think if I had to guess, that character probably sensed that she didn't need that kind of shit.
Right.
She already had a mission to, she had purpose in her journey already. Whereas like he was still trying to find his way, unknowing to him, unbeknownst. Willie was kind of, putting him on this journey, not really knowing what was coming at the end.
Yeah, and it's funny because I feel like in that sequence, it was one of those, like, in any other movie, it would be like, oh, damn, she left. But then you almost expect her to come back at the end, and the harp music plays, and it's like, oh, she's
like a rom-com.
Yeah, she had a change of heart or whatever.
This
but
ain't
no.
it.
No, it does not happen. And I love that. I actually really like that about this movie, is like, it's very, like, it stays the course of what Willie is trying to teach Eugene, but I guess also like what they are trying to teach
perfectly
us.
to what he's trying to do.
Yeah. Cause like, after she leaves that evening, and like Willie's like, no, she's gone. Like, she left, and she left early this morning.
Yeah,
and
that was kind of cool. He said a lot without saying nothing.
Right.
Just the way he was looking at Eugene. He's like, where's Frances? Did she go get breakfast? What's going on? Blah, blah, blah. And he just kept looking at him with the sad, like kind of like, she's gone. She ain't here. And he kept like he was in denial. And he's like, no, where is she? And he's like, and he never said a word. He just, the way he was looking at him in that scene was like the sadness that was like the sadness was coming.
Right. Well, it's almost like he was trying to.
It was a good scene.
It really was, because it was almost like he was trying to transfer to him, like, hey, this is a moment in your life, like, and you should transpose this to like let it happen, like let the sadness like in, so that you can let it out, right? Like, and you can put it into the music, because, and I agree with you that this whole sequence I really love. In this part of the movie, I guess this is probably about 3/4 of the way through the movie, where like, they're having this conversation, Willie's like in his white, t-shirt, or they're both like in their like, damn,
what are those called?
I don't know, just like white shirts or white
tank tops. Tank tops. They're in tank tops.
I was like,
there's another thing I'm not going to call.
Yeah.
I was
they're in their tank tops, drinking whiskey together, and they're at the table, and they're sort of chatting, and in the background you can see his guitar just like sitting on the wall,
over his shoulder,
and like you said, like without even saying too much, he's almost like looking at the guitar like, go let it out, put it in
what you're feeling guitar right now. It's the blues. It's right there.
And it's cool because like, I agree with you, like that's really the point where like, I think Willie knows that there was always potential. Yeah. Like your fingers and your technical ability is there, but like you needed the emotion those life missing. Experiences. Yeah.
The emotion was missing out of it.
Yeah. Like he kept saying
he had the fucking technical, he was smoking it at Juilliard.
Yeah.
So like, when he was playing the classical piece, but then at the end he kind of twisted it with a little, like jazzy, a little jazzy, a little blue, a little something at the end, and he was like, the professor was like, that was great till the end, he was like insulted that he didn't play the classical piece,
that's right, because he said
to the note, he
said he's like disrespecting, like,
oh, that's right, he was disrespecting the composer and the music, and
right,
so there was hints of him having some personality in his music, but because he's going to Juilliard, it was like, it's by the book, by the note, right. The technicality of everything. Whereas like at this moment, he finally feels the emotion. And since he's already got all the technical skill to add the emotion to it, because he was feeling the heartbreak of, his the love of his life that he knew for a couple of days, was gone. Yeah. So now he's like, has all this emotion pent up. And
there's a good chance, because I mean, he says he's 17, right? Like this could have been the first girl that he was actually with, like who had slept with, sure. Right? So like, his virginity may have been lost to her. So that's why like it was a heavier hit for him, Yeah. And so like that really, again, kind of adds into the blues. So that whole sequence, I thought that's like, well, I mean, it's not the climax of the movie, but I feel like it is like the really awesome turning point of the movie. Because it is like a road trip movie, and you kind of almost are like, man, when are they going to play music? Like, because they do play some throughout, and the soundtrack for sure, like that is overplayed, or that is kind of laid underneath the movie. It's all good, but it's almost like you expected a little bit more. Like I don't
he's
know.
carrying around a fucking guitar the whole time they're walking and hitchhiking, and
Willie's got his harmonica,
lugging around a guitar.
Yeah, and
they don't play it enough.
Yeah, I guess as a reflection, in my mind, I was like, man, I thought there was more music in this. And granted, there is quite a bit at the end, which I feel like kind of makes up for it. But yeah, I mean, regardless, like it's the first time that he plays. Like I was mentioning, like when he's playing for him in the old folk home, it's deliberately played very like, yeah, it's good. It's technically like sounds like the blues, but it doesn't sound like the blues.
There's no soul in it.
And then in this sequence, like it's hard to describe other than you have to hear it, but the music definitely sounds fuller and richer and sadder, and it's got the feeling of the blues. And I think that's like really, really cool.
I don't know if you noticed, but like when he's back in the beginning when he's playing for him in the home,
the retirement home, yeah.
Like if you remember, like when he's playing the guitar, he keeps looking at Willie for like approval.
Oh,
the whole time, right? Like he's like playing and he's looking at him and he's playing and Eugene's just going off. And at the end, after he sits down, after he's been drinking and he's sad about the girl, is the first time he sits down and he like closes his eyes and he's playing. And it's almost like symbolic. Like when you close your eyes, it's because you're looking in, I guess, and you're feeling the emotion, and it's just coming out through your instrument. Because I mean, I know I've seen a lot of concerts or whatever, and usually the guys that are feeling it when they're playing, when they're in that moment, their fucking eyes are closed, and they're just. There's no other way to explain it. I mean, I know we didn't follow in our music careers, but I know that we've had our moments when we were doing something, or like I mean, I've lost my piano skills, but I remember having times where like. There's a point where you don't need to look at what you're doing. You're just feeling what you're playing.
Right. Yep.
And you just, and so that scene where he finally like has that moment of feeling the music and feeling the hurt coming through the music. Right. The scene was, I guess, done the way I would expect it to. Like, his eyes are closed and he's just kind of rocking and he's feeling the pain. And it's translating out of the guitar, and it was like a perfect scene of like you said, it's not the crescendo, it's not the climax of the movie, but as far as the journey,
right,
minus the end, this was the second. I guess it was like the small roller coaster, climax before the big one at the end. Yeah,
and because really. What you kind of learn or what ends up being happening is like that is sort of the, like you said, it's the first hill that we go over, because that is sort of that is the end of like Eugene's journey, in the sense of like he wanted to learn that song, this 30th magical song.
That's right. We didn't mention that.
Yeah, which turns out like never actually existed.
And he tells him that right before he goes to the chair to sit down and play. Willie tells him that. Mm-hmm. He tells him so he gets all of that bad news at the same time. You know? And then, like the girl's gone, and he's like, oh, I'm really gonna miss her. And he's like, well, I guess you could just teach me the song, and I'll feel better about this. About that.
Yeah,
there's no fucking
song. Yeah, and that's
it was all bullshit.
Too.
I just had to get out of that fucking place. I needed to get back to Mississippi.
Yeah, you've been used. Like
again, more hardship.
Yep.
All this was great. For nothing.
Yeah, that's great, because it's life, right? It's just it's just the way life works, And so it's kind of the end of Eugene's journey in that sense of like, turns out he did learn that 30th song, but it's like his own version of it, and he actually now he can say that he knows the blues because he's felt the blues, and like
he's had some hardship in his life finally.
Yeah, we've kind of reached the end of that journey, but then it turns out that like Willie does have like an ulterior motive, which is like, he's like saying like, well, he was talking about how he wanted to go down there and he would teach him the song because blah blah blah. Well, it turns out like, because in the opening part of the movie, like both, I guess, Willie and Robert, the guitar player, Robert Johnson, they've all like signed agreements with. It's sort of inferred, but they never actually say. I guess the person that they're making these agreements with is like Scratch, who's like, oh, I'll cut you this deal, and you can play music for me like every Saturday night, and you'll always have a place to play. But basically, they're signing those are the deals with the devil that I guess that they have made. And I kind of wish it would go into a little bit more depth of like, did it mean that they didn't have to like never having to worry about money again, or never having to worry about, anything other than the fact that they have a place to play, like, and that could be just maybe enough, right? To say like, the thing about the blues, right, is like, not everybody wants to hear the blues. And a lot of times they would play outside of these venues, or unless black people like created a juke for them to play in, like at that time, especially during the whole Jim Crow era, like it's not like black people had a place to just go and set up and play. So the blues were not really something you could hear all the time. But this venue that this guy Scratch was agreeing to give to them to play, which basically was just a deal with the devil. So Willie Brown wants his contract to be removed, because I guess, and again, I wish a little bit more was inferred. It seemed like a lot was weighing on Willie's mind, and he would have like night terrors and stuff when he would sleep about the fact that I guess like his soul belongs to somebody else. Like, again, it's not very explicit.
Yeah. It's there's a lot that you can kind of, like you said, there's nothing.
It's like you can sort of infer, but
but I know when he's having that confrontation when they make it to the actual crossroads, and Scratch actually appears. Right. And again, they never call him the devil, but it's clearly Scratch is who that is.
Right.
And that's where they kind of have the conversation where Willie is basically complaining that his contract should be torn up because he didn't get the life he was promised.
Right.
I guess, because, Robert Johnson in real life, he had this career, he's known as the king of the Delta blues singers. Right. And, whereas Willie kind of got screwed, right. And he ended up, spending time in jail, and he was in this minimum security. Like, his life was, he had a miserable life, basically. Yeah. So he thinks he got screwed. So when he wants to go back to Mississippi because he's got some unfinished business, he's basically trying to, hey, this contract's bullshit because my life has been shit. And why should, you should tear up my contract.
Yeah.
And that's where that back and forth goes, where he's like, well, if you got something to give me.
Yeah. And he's like, I'll tell you what, I'll cut you a deal. And it's funny because Eugene, who now feels like kind of a little cocky, because he's kind of like, I know the blues. I'm a blues man. And he's like, I don't believe any of this like voodoo, sort of stuff. And like Willie's like, no. You need to realize like this is real. And he's like,
no. You don't know who you're talking to.
Yeah. He's like, I'll tell you what. He's like, why don't you play against my guitar guy that I just signed? Because I just signed a contract with him. And then he's like, well, wait a minute. He's like, but he plays harmonica, and this guy plays guitar. So like, how's that like a fair fight? And he's like, well, like, I guess then there's nothing we can do about it. And Eugene's sort of like, well, then I'll do it. I play guitar. I'll play against him. And, he's like, well, wait a minute. He's like, I've already got something from him. So if
what do I get?
Yeah, what do I get if you lose? And he's like, well, then, you can have me. And like, basically they are now playing for the soul of Willie, which takes us to this finale.
And Eugene, I mean, because he puts it on the table. Basically, he's going to play on behalf of Willie, but if he loses, he loses his soul and Willie's.
Right. Yeah.
But if he wins, then Willie's free.
Yeah. So the finale like takes us to this really cool. I love this set. Like I love this ending. Like to be honest, like this really is the climax of the movie, and this is obviously this is what I remember the most of this movie.
Yes,
because we were big, obviously musician nerds, and we were both listening to Joe Satriani and Steve Vai at this time in our lives.
Eric Johnson, Yngwie Malmsteen. I mean, there's all kinds of names. I mean, even Eddie Van Halen's in that shit.
Yeah, Van Halen, Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Oh God, yeah. Oh, how could I forget that name? God,
yeah,
I live in Austin. Jesus.
Well, yeah, and I'm here, right? He's from South Dallas, but
He got a statue over here.
Well, that's true. But so they end up in what appears to be like a barn, like some sort of.
I mean, that is like the juke joint of all juke joints.
Yeah, which I mean, I will say, if you do get a chance to watch Sinners, this juke joint that they are in looks a little bit like the one from Sinners. Like if I'm not too mistaken, but it's got a similar vibe to it. And what's cool about it is the lighting in it is clearly like we're in some sort of purgatory or something, because
it definitely has those
lighting.
Vibes, a lot of red lights. Yeah, hell yeah.
The audience is all like made up of like black people that are like all dressed like almost for a funeral, and they have what do you call that? I guess like at a funeral, they usually give you the little flower that you kind of put like on your breastplate or like on your jacket, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so like the women are holding roses, and it's fucking cool, like is what it is. And so Scratch is sitting there with this like sort of wicked smile and like these like fedora hats, which is like really cool.
He played a good devil.
Yeah.
I mean, he had the right look for it. It was just menacing enough, like, because I mean he doesn't have the what you think of like the devil, like, the horns and the red, there's none of that shit. But I mean, he just looks like
he's got the smile, he's got
the
big teeth,
evil kind of grin, just a shit-eating grin.
Yeah, I loved it. It was great. And it literally is a music showdown between I guess
Jack Butler was Steve Vai's character was Jack
that's right.
Butler. He was the soul that Scratch had as his champion, I guess.
Yeah, his most recent hire. And they are up on stage, like just basically like dueling against each other, and it's fucking rad. Like it's so cool.
Yeah.
Which again, like I'm pretty sure Steve Vai is playing music for both of them. And I really love it because also from the 80s, like they're kind of playing up a little bit on like he is playing like a form of blues, jazz, rock. Like it's more modernized is what like Steve Vai is playing, and then like Ralph Macchio is playing more like the traditional blues, but also with like a little bit of a modern lick to it, but still like mostly blues. So he's primarily using a lot of like steel slide and stuff like that, which gives it a very unique sound and a more like raw, like sort of like earthy tone, sort of against this very like hair metal band.
I was gonna say like hair metal-ish, because like Jack Butler's character was wearing like leather pants. Yeah, like very very rock star-ish, hair band.
Yeah. He's got the red tank top.
Exactly. He's got Macho still got the fedora with the.
Yeah,
he had very little time. Yeah, Steve Vai had very little time because he really only comes out in the final battle thing. Yeah. But his presence was really big.
Yeah, he feels like a demon. Like
exactly.
Like he's kind of got this big smile on his face and his eyes and the way he emotes. And his hair, his long hair is kind of draping over his face, so you kind of see only part of it. Yeah. Oh man, that's a perfect. He feels he feels like if you had to rank, like I mean, we've probably let's just the D&D of it all, right? Like he is one of like the leader type demon, but not like a heavy.
He's like a sub boss.
Yeah, exactly. Like there may be like maybe 2 or 3 of him total, in an entire campaign, but they're like their own thing. Whereas like a boss would just have Scratch is like the boss. So there's just one.
And
there's
he's like
just
one of
his
his demon lieutenants. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the mini bosses you got to beat to get to the big boss kind of guy.
Yeah, exactly. That's how Steve Vai like feels, and it's so cool.
Yes.
You know, like
yeah.
The music that goes between the two of them is just because it basically that's like the last about 15 minutes of the movie of just kind of them going back and forth and eventually gets the best of them, which kind of like it was okay. Like I kind of wish he had done something a little different, but he ends up going back to classical music, but adapting classical music with the blues music in order to beat the Jack's character. Which, I mean, it makes sense from the movie standpoint because that's what he was studying and what he knew. And he kind of gave it this like sort of vibe to it. But I kind of wish that he had just played straight up blues. Like it was just something like super bluesy. But I get it.
Given the theme of the whole movie of the blues and the hardship, it seems like it would have made more sense. But
super bluesy.
But I guess, but because I guess he was already in that world, he has to counter with something that they haven't already heard. And since he can go back to his technical Juilliard skills that isn't as predominant in the blues realm, I guess he was able to kind of like, counter that with some shit that Jack Butler couldn't do. Right.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it was okay. But I mean, it eventually kind of like, it comes back around. It's like, okay, yeah, that's cool. I can dig that. Like that was cool.
It was a good ending. I liked it. Yeah,
absolutely.
It ended well.
Yeah, he outduels him, and he outplays him in a way that he's like, okay, you got the best of me, and I love like the way he beats him, and he sort of just drops the guitar,
and just walks out to the crowd,
it feels like a championship boxing match because his shoulders are all slumped and whatnot. And then, so like, basically it just kind of ends with like Eugene and Willie Brown, like playing harmonica and guitar. And like, now everyone's like kind of in their favor. And it's really cool. Like,
they won the crowd over like in Rocky.
Yeah.
And then they just kind of look into the crowd and Scratch just has that pissed off face, but a deal's a deal. That's the one thing that everybody, every urban legend lore about the devil is, as crooked as he is, a deal's a deal.
Yeah.
So, they just kind of, there at the end, one of the final scenes is basically Scratch very, theatrically gets the contract and rips it up and then just walks out, without saying a word.
Yep.
So that was cool. That was a fitting ending.
Yeah. I think that was pretty awesome. And then like it literally just kind of ends with the two of them walking off together into the sunset, and he basically like Willie's like, I'm going to Chicago and I'm going to, basically end out my days up there. And Ralph Macchio's like, oh, we should play together. And I think like it's almost kind of funny because he's like, man, son, didn't you learn anything? He's like, you got to go on your own road. You got to make your own path. You got to make your own blues and make your own stories.
Take your music somewhere else.
And live, whether you live on the road or whatever, like you don't follow in my shadow. You go make your own shadow. And they kind of the movie just kind of ends there. So I think it's like really cool. I guess just to kind of jump to the point, because I actually had something else I wanted to kind of say, is this a top shelf video movie? No, like, I don't think so. I think it's a fun movie for me. I enjoyed it. I don't think, I'd be curious, what you think if it is a top shelf video, but I mean, I don't think it is. And I don't think it's because it's a bad movie. I think it's actually a good movie, and there's so much opportunity here. That I feel like could have done a little bit more, but this guy, Walter Hill was making tons of things, and I feel like this falls in his like sort of treehouse of things that he was doing. But I feel like it maybe didn't execute the way that he, or the way that maybe it intended on paper, I guess maybe. But
Yeah.
what do you think?
Well, I mean, you've said it before. I mean, clearly we're brothers, and we kind of have the same feels about certain things. Because I also did not. I don't think it's a good movie, like you said. I like the whole. There's plenty of movies out there about deals with the devil. Devil's Advocate. I think Ghost Rider technically. That's a
I don't know if I ever
deal
seen
with
Ghost
the devil.
Rider. Yeah.
Yeah, the Nicolas Cage flick. Yeah, I mean, but yeah, Spawn. Shit, I was even looking up like Bedazzled.
Oh yeah.
Brendan Fraser. And so like this is definitely a no for me. Short answer is no, but I did enjoy it.
Yeah.
I love the music.
Yes.
And again, we're music nerds, obviously. I enjoyed the big battle, the guitar battle at the end was awesome.
Yeah.
But it's a no. But it's but more than welcome in our video store.
This is one of the very few times before we go to like formats. And I should say, like, you and I watched this together on Discord on VHS, because I do have this tape on VHS. So I will say this before we go to formats. This is one of the very few movies that I will say that, like, in a time period when, like, a lot of people get really upset because they're very quick to be like, oh, well, there are no original ideas and everybody just wants to make remakes and they're trying to remake IPs. Like, I don't know if you ever got around to watching that movie, The Fall Guy. The
new one, the Ryan Gosling.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it yet. No.
Okay. I think it's good. I mean, I think it's very entertaining. I think it's good. I think a lot of people don't realize that is actually in an IP that you and I grew up with. The Lee Majors.
The TV show
Fall Guy. Yeah, but I think like most people, when I would ask them about it, they were like, I don't know what the Fall Guy is. I'm like, oh, dude, it's like it was a great TV show.
This is one of the few truck.
Well, yeah. Who didn't?
I digress. Stay on topic, I guess.
One of the very few times that I will say, like, I wish that they would remake this movie. Like, 100% remake this movie and really execute. Like, I would be worried, but also at the same time, like, I think this movie, like, lacked a little bit of follow through on execution. Like, I would love to know more about the deal with the devil. Like, the things that are really, like, making him not feel like he has his soul anymore, like, like, what is it that's really bothering him? Like, let's see more of those night terrors. Let's see more of like the horrific things that maybe he has to remember that he's agreed in giving up his soul. Like,
right.
I think the grandness of like the road trip aspect could be even bigger. Like, and again, I'm saying all this having recently watched Sinners. I feel like this is one of those, like, man, just give me a very wide screen, very epic, like beautiful, like United States, crop fields or areas in the South or areas, in that part of the country where in certain aspects, it is pretty. It's pretty in its own way, right? Like, that area is a little bit more flat than other parts of the country, but there's something about like those areas that is, I feel like, genuinely pretty. And I feel like you could also like lean a little bit more into the story of like the blues and why the blues is the blues, right? Like where it comes from and what it means to know the blues and all that stuff. Like, I feel like with a good script and already like the technology that you have to be able to do a lot of these more grand shots and being able to do things on a more like, you don't have to go, like, I don't, like, this is one of those movies, like, you don't need CG or you don't need this, like, we don't need to see the devil with the horns and like fire coming out of like the guitar. I just would love to see a reimagining of this with just like a better script, like, and a little bit more thought into the setup of some of the shots and the visuals, so that like you really get the sense of like this older man passing that wisdom to somebody who thinks they know the music, but it's like you don't think the music, you feel the music, right? Like you have to you have to have that connection. And that's what this whole road trip's about, is for you to make your connections and for you to have your version of the blues. I would love to see somebody remake this. Like, I think it would be a fantastic remake. And with like the musicians and stuff you have now, as cheesy as it sounds, you could have that one guy, I can't remember his name, but like, what is it? My Body's a Wonderland guy.
Shit. Jason Mraz?
Maybe.
Jason
I think
something.
it is. No. So that guy, like because I've seen that guy play like guitar in a way that I'm like, oh shit. I was like, I didn't realize that dude, that guy knows like the blues.
John Mayer.
There you go. Well, I've seen him play like where it's very bluesy. It's very like jazz. It's actually not what I thought he actually played, because like he had those radio hits, but when he plays like that sort of other stuff, it's like, oh man, that is like Stevie Ray Vaughan, like sort of Eric Clapton kind of very soul-y type of music.
His riffs, his guitar riffs have a little hint of blues.
Yes.
In it.
And it's very soulful, and I would love to see him be the devil. And I'm sure a lot of women would love to see him be the devil, and then have like some young up and coming, well, I will say this, and this isn't a spoiler, but man, there's a kid in Sinners who's playing the blues, and it's very similar to this. Man, that kid has a voice that is just unreal. Like, it is like, for a minute there, I was like, man, is that really his voice? Like, or is that like some sort of, is that some sort of like simulated voice or something? But like,
some auto-tune shit.
Well, that's the thing. It's not auto-tuned. Even if it was auto-tuned, he's kind of got like that real low, like, talks like he smokes cigarettes all the time. But he sings in a way that it's just like,
but that's the blues sound, that old scruffy, like, dirty and hard. And I get what you're saying. I can hear it in my head, what you're describing. I know what you mean.
Yeah. And it's funny because even in the movie, they're kind of like, how old are you, kid? Like, it's one of these, like, ain't no way you can play the blues, sort of scenario, because it's like, man, if he can sound like that, I mean, it's just unreal. But I would love to see like him, sort of being like that character, and then seeing like, John Mayer being the devil, or not the devil, but like the Steve Vai character, which one of the demons or whatever. And then, like, I don't know, the devil could really just kind of be anybody. At that point, it could be like I can even think of like a Walter Goggins, the guy from the Fallout. Did you ever watch the Fallout series on Amazon?
The
guy with the oh crap, why can't I remember what they're called? I worked on Fallout games. The guy without the nose, the
ghoul.
The ghoul, that's right. That guy, Walter Goggins, is that guy. I could see that guy playing the devil, because he's got a real like Southern drawl accent, and he's kind of got like this smile and this like, well, I don't know if you watch The Righteous Gemstones.
Okay, I could see that. Yeah.
But he plays like a evangelist, like a scam artist evangelist in the Righteous Gemstones, and he's always like got this southern drawl, and he's always got this big smile, and it's just very like, oh man, that guy's totally the devil. Like I could totally see him doing that. I would love to see a movie like that with some old jazz player as as the guy that teaches everybody something or whatever in the end. But I think that would be a cool remake.
That'd be interesting. I was gonna say, man, Al Pacino played a good devil in Devil's Advocate, but
Yeah, he did.
he already played the devil in Devil's Advocate, so I wouldn't want him to reprise the role.
Yeah,
give it let somebody else get a shot at the title.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's already understood. Al Pacino can play the devil, so got it.
Yeah,
but man, he kicked ass in that movie.
Yes, that movie is a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Yeah, so not a top shelf video, but that's okay. Like I think it's still a very good. I think it's a good movie. I think it's worth being in our store. We watched it on VHS, and I have like the way I have it set up here in the shop is like you and I are watching on Discord, but I do have like a JVC like tube CRT that I watch that streams through. So I can watch like how the picture actually looks. This movie's actually like looks really good on VHS. Like there's something about like the graininess and the sort of like texture of it, because it is a road trip.
Perfectly into the road trip and the like they find themselves in the dark corners while they're on the road, like in the bar, it's not that the deep south is dirty,
right?
But the griminess, like the whole point of the hardship and the like, just all the rough things about the journey is, it's not all squeaky clean like Juilliard,
Right.
So VHS, the graininess, the texture, it plays perfectly into given the atmosphere, I guess, of the story, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it actually plays well on VHS. So I think this is one that I actually would prefer not to have much beyond a VHS and a DVD of Crossroads.
Yeah.
I think when it starts looking a little too pretty, you start being able to, you kind of see through it a little bit of like, this is probably, it's a little rough, around the corners or whatever.
Right.
When you really are able to analyze it. Which is why it's like, well, then if that's the case, then just remake the movie, or do a remake and shoot it on film, if you can, because I think it would give it that extra sort of texture. But I figure like probably a VHS and a DVD for this movie is probably more than fine. Let's see. This is one of the few times that I actually don't know if I really care for this poster. To be honest, like for this movie.
Yeah. I looked at it.
It's very, nothing particularly special. I think they could have done a little bit more with it, just from a personal, graphic artist standpoint, but, in thinking of like the sorts of things that we could maybe use, in the shop for this, I think it would be cool to have like some steel slides. Steel slides, they look like the little, you put it on your ring finger and we could probably laser engrave on those,
for sure.
Something along the lines that has to do with like an agreement, or some sort of contract or something, with Top Shelf Video, that you're making an agreement, with Top Shelf. And so you have to rent every Saturday night. Or something along those lines.
That's funny that you went with that, because I was going to suggest guitar picks.
Oh yeah,
with just Top Shelf Video on one side and the other side maybe like a I don't know, like maybe like a little playful devil, maybe not so
actually,
just something.
I kind of like that. I like the idea of like a devil. I think going back to the Steve Vai character. Almost like a very like a cartoony sort of devil, like like the kind that would be very fever dreamish that you would see sometimes in some of those like Bugs Bunny type of like
it kind of looks like Marvin the Martian, but it's in red. With a pitchfork, kind of very very stereotypical cartoony devil.
Yeah.
So,
let's see. I don't know. Like, I think those are like some easy picks. no pun intended, but pun intended, that you could kind of throw in there. I always thought Ralph Macchio's character of Eugene had a very like, almost kind of like an a-hole sort of like, it's like, why are you dressing like this? Like, I don't know any
with the
blues
rolled up
player.
sleeves on the blazer.
Yes, I don't know any blues player that dresses up like that other than like assholes. And so there's something about that look though that sort of fits this, even though like Willie Brown has like a nice suit, you know, but not this like rolled up blazer shit, you know, just kind of, you know, the hat is cool though, I will say.
Yeah. But he finds that during the journey. He doesn't start with that.
Yeah.
He starts as a New York, you know, New York Juilliard attire, and then it just kind of gets a little dingier along the travels, you know?
Yeah, he kind of gets away from that look by the end of the movie. He's already like, the look has changed.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, because he's got the tank top, and he's kind of looking a little more raggedy. Yeah,
a little more disheveled, like his pants are a little more worn down, and he has like a more of a regular blazer that doesn't make him look like a douchebag. You know, I think the other easy thing would just be like a harmonica, you know, for people that know how to play.
Yeah. Or if they don't.
If they don't, yeah, I guess, you know.
We can laser engrave those too.
Yeah, like a just a top shelf video, you know, a real nice harmonica kind of on there.
I like the font on the Crossroads poster. I do like the font of that, so we could probably put that.
Yeah.
On the harmonica with the top shelf video.
I would agree that's probably one for sure. The only other thing I can think of that I would probably want from the shop is I would love to have this soundtrack on vinyl. I think it'd be cool. Like, I think,
nice. Okay.
I think this is a good. The music in this is really good. Like the soundtrack music and the music that they pick, and then if they can just play all the sort of the music that encompasses that, I think it would be pretty cool. Yeah, I think that covers most of the things. The only last thing I was going to ask you, because I'd be curious if any of our other listeners have listened to this, because I always loved these, like the tales or the stories of like making a deal with the devil, sort of like you would find them in comic books, you know, or like some of the stuff that we would read back then, you know, or if people would tell you these stories, you know, of like, oh, well, you know, they shouldn't have made that deal with the devil, you know, and it almost always like revolved around music. It's like the only way you could be good is if you make this deal with the devil that, you know, you'll be the best of the best when it comes to musicians. Did you ever watch the music video for Devil Went Down to Georgia?
Yes.
But it's the one from Primus where it's like a stop motion animation.
Oh shit. No.
Okay, so Primus does a version of Devil Went Down to Georgia, and it's all done in stop motion animation. And when we close up the shop tonight, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show it to you because I used to go to this. They don't do it anymore, and I kind of wish they would. It was always like a big part of my 20s here in Dallas. But there used to be an event called Spike and Mike's Sick and Twisted Animation Festival. And it would travel like all throughout the country. And this is like, I guess DVDs were slowly starting to roll out. Every now and then you could find a Spike and Mike's animation festival on VHS, but it would go to theaters and then they would play on a screen. So they had film prints of it, and then they would go from like Dallas to like Memphis, and then to like Philly, and then, you know, to LA. And,
interesting.
And so it would always have like independent artists. It was actually the first time I ever watched the original South Park, because that was one of the animation festival pieces that was on there. But every time the festival would end, it would end with Devil Went Down to Georgia, the Primus version with the stop motion animated like film, because it's really good. And like, it's really good the way that Primus does it, but the animated version of it and the devil in it are fucking phenomenal. So, if you haven't seen it, if you haven't seen it, you need to watch it. So trust me, if you're listening to the podcast, like go look up Devil Went Down to Georgia, Primus. Yeah, I could put it in the notes, and that way people can check that out, because that was the only other thing I could think of that was like, that reminded me of this movie. It's like, oh, the devil versus somebody else. When it comes to music, but
yeah.
But yeah,
hey, we should have like in our fake video store, we should have like tube TVs hanging from the ceiling so we can just play music videos in the store.
Oh yeah, sure, absolutely.
And maybe like some old VHS copies of like Headbangers Ball and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. Just to kind of break up the day. Oh yeah, absolutely. Like 120 minutes, Headbangers Ball. Yeah, all the
old good stuff, man.
Yeah,
back when MTV had videos.
Well, really, you could just play like Night Flight. A lot of you could easily fill up a lot of that time with Night Flight, which is very similar. But well, all right. I feel like we're at our crossroads for tonight.
Yep.
We love any feedback. Leave us comments, rate us, review us on all the platforms where you can find your podcast, or wherever you want to download us. We're on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, pretty much everything, I think, thanks to Podbean knocking all that out of the park for us. But yeah, also you can go to our website, topshelfvideo.com, and you can find our episodes there. You can also reach out to us and message us there. We'd love suggestions on movies that maybe you would like to hear about. Also, if you want to apply for or put in an application for that, we can review that and see if we want to interview you about your movie on Top Shelf Video. And then also you can email us at topshelfvideopodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from people and get some feedback. But yeah, man, I feel like it's time to close up the shop. Starting to get a little dark out. It's getting a little creepy. We have that bus stop outside now that who knows what kind of people are going to be coming in, and coming in from out of town, and what their backstories might be. But yeah. Well, yeah,
I think I'm going to throw on some Stevie Ray Vaughan while we're
that's not a bad idea. While we're shutting down here. Yeah, you know what? I second that. I think that's a good move. I guess that's why we're brothers. But well, all right. We're going to go ahead and turn off the neon sign for tonight, but we will catch everybody at the next work shift. See you guys.
All right. See ya.